the night was still when the cry of two newborns echoed through the cold marble halls of the mansion. A place so vast and golden it looked more like a palace than a home. Alexander Monroe, one of the richest men in the country, stood at the nursery door with a face carved in stone. His twins, his only children, had just been born. But what should have been the happiest day of his life had turned into a silent storm. The doctor's words kept replaying in his mind like a broken record. "They're both paralyzed from the waist down. There's nothing we can do." The nurses whispered. The servants lowered their eyes, and for the first time, Alexander's empire felt powerless. He had conquered industries, built empires, crushed competitors. But he couldn't fix the tiny, fragile lives of his own children. He stared at their little bodies lying in white cribs, their legs limp, their futures uncertain. The world outside celebrated his wealth. The world inside his heart crumbled quietly. Among the household staff, she was invisible to everyone except the twins. Grace Thompson, the black maid who worked silently in the background. She was soft-spoken, always wearing a plain uniform, her hands rough from scrubbing marble floors, and her eyes carrying stories of pain and prayers. Nobody paid her much attention. She had worked in the Monroe mansion for years, long before the babies were born, and had seen Alexander rise from a young, ambitious businessman to an untouchable billionaire. Every night, when everyone else went home, she stayed late, cleaning corners no one cared about. But that night, something inside her stirred when she heard the twins' cries. As the weeks passed, the atmosphere in the mansion grew heavier. Specialists flew in from across the world, famous neurologists, miracle therapists, even spiritual healers. They came with promises, took their checks, and left with quiet defeat. Alexander's wife, Victoria Monroe, withdrew into her room, unable to face the children or the whispers of the world. But Grace didn't withdraw. She was always there, softly humming lullabies from her childhood. Songs that carried the warmth of faith and the strength of mothers who had nothing but hope. At night, when the house fell into silence, she would gently hold the twins, one at a time, whispering words no one else could hear. Her hands moved with a strange rhythm, not quite a dance, not quite a prayer, something ancient, something alive. One evening, after a day of another failed treatment, Alexander came down to the nursery. He had been drinking heavily, his tailored suit slightly unbuttoned, his eyes bloodshot. He pushed the door open quietly, expecting to see lifeless cribs and the usual silence. But what he saw stopped his breath cold. The nursery glowed faintly, not from the chandelier above, but from the soft moonlight streaming through the window, falling directly on Grace. She sat cross-legged on the floor with the twins in her lap, her hands gently moving over their tiny legs. She was whispering something low and steady, like a river that never runs dry. And then he saw it, their toes moved. Not a spasm, not an accident, but a deliberate curl of their little toes. Alexander froze, his heart pounding. "What are you doing?" he barked, his voice breaking the spell. Grace flinched but didn't stop. "I'm praying," she said softly, her voice like warm honey against his cold fury. "Praying?" He laughed bitterly. "Do you think prayer can fix what billions couldn't?" But Grace didn't answer. She just looked at the twins and whispered, "I've seen prayer move mountains, sir. And these little legs are not mountains to me." Her quiet faith unsettled him more than any doctor's report. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. But he couldn't unsee what he saw, the small, undeniable movement of their toes. The next night, he returned. This time sober, standing at the door, watching silently. She was there again, like a shadow that refused to leave. Every night, she sang softly in a language he didn't understand, cradling the twins like they were her own flesh and blood. Slowly, day after day, the small movements grew. First their toes. Then their knees twitched. And one morning, a sound broke through the house, a soft giggle from one of the babies, accompanied by the tiniest kick. The doctor who had declared it impossible stared at the test results with disbelief. "It's not medically explainable," he muttered. "Their nerves are regenerating." Alexander couldn't sleep that night. The image of Grace sitting in the moonlight replayed over and over. This woman, whom the world didn't even notice, was holding something that all his power couldn't buy. But Grace wasn't doing it for praise. She came every night, unseen, unthanked, praying with a heart full of love. One night, he finally approached her, sitting quietly in the corner as she prayed. "Why?" he asked softly, his voice stripped of arrogance. "Why are you doing this?" She looked up, her eyes shimmering. "Because they are children," she whispered. "And because someone once prayed for me when the world thought I was broken." Weeks passed, and the impossible happened. The twins began moving their legs. Doctors flew back in. Journalists tried to uncover a medical miracle, but Alexander knew the truth. It wasn't science, it was something far greater, something pure. He looked at Grace with new eyes. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was the heartbeat in the house that had gone silent. He upgraded her room, doubled her salary, but she didn't care for the money. What made her smile was the sight of those children standing for the first time. Wobbling but determined. The day the twins took their first steps, the entire mansion gathered. The marble halls that once echoed with silence now trembled with laughter and tears. Grace stood in the corner, hands folded. Tears streaming down her cheeks as the children walked toward their father. Alexander dropped to his knees, arms wide, sobbing like a man who had found his soul again. He pulled his twins close, whispering promises he meant this time, not of power, but of love. And then he looked at Grace, the woman he had never truly seen, and said, "You saved them." She shook her head. "No, sir. Love did." In that moment, Alexander understood something he had never grasped in all his years of building empires. True strength doesn't always wear suits or sign billion-dollar deals. Sometimes it wears a maid's uniform, sings lullabies in the dark, and believes when no one else does.